As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my right.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Good morning, everyone. It's Monday morning, January 31st, 2022. But in some ways, this show, in my mind, if people listen to it 100 years from now, they'll find it to be really remarkable and content-laden. And that's a humble prayer that we are actually, that the civilization, that the world will still be in existence 100 years from now. To help that become a manifest reality, and I'm not being facetious, but in terms of our health issues and just survival of the planet, today's show is going to talk about the value of clinical and translational research, the value of clinical and translational research. And I'm not being macabre. Can we survive and protect one another? And the folks I have on the show this morning are passionate about that desire, but not only just passionate, but are walking the walk. So the value of clinical and translational research. My guests are Dr. Brian Smith, professor of laboratory medicine and biomedical engineering of medicine and of pediatrics. And he's also the co-chair of the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation. He has about 5 other titles, which you will hear about as well. Tisha Johnson is with us. Tisha is the Deputy Director and Chief Operations Officer for the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation and Director of Clinical Research for Yale School of Medicine. You'll hear these words, clinical and research, a lot because, again, this is the news. This is the 24/7, 365 news, everybody, as far as I'm concerned. Reverend Elvin Clayton is with us. Reverend Clayton is the pastor of Walters Memorial AME Zion Church in Bridgeport and cultural ambassador to the Yale Clinical Research Program. If you feel that this is a solicitation for us to recruit volunteers for the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation, you are right. We all need to understand that we're being experimented on one way or the other, and whether you can manage the research, be a part of the research process, exercise your civic duty, this is the opportunity. Reverend Dr. Leroy O. Perry Jr. is with us. Dr. Perry is the pastor of St. Stephen's AME Zion Church located in Brantford, just outside New Haven, and cultural ambassador to the Yale Clinical Research Program. Dr. Smith, let's get started. I've alluded to you're having one head but many hats, and you do wear many hats at the Yale School of Medicine. But one of the positions you hold admirably, and we're going to talk about why that you're held in such esteem by your colleagues. But you're the deputy dean for clinical and translational research. What does that mean for a person on the street or at home or in schools? But we're not going to dumb it down either. These positions are not easily come by, and they have to be acquired with expertise and reputation and skill. So as the deputy dean for clinical and translational research, tell us about this role and share a little bit. And give other people time to talk also. Don't, give other folks people time to talk. But how does translational research, how does it benefit the community? So welcome, and let's hear from you, Dr. Smith.
Thanks very much, Ms. Ficklin. Thanks very much for having me on the show. I'm very pleased to be here, and you made a very kind introduction that I hope I can live up to with all my colleagues here. So, clinical and translational research is really taking all the types of research that get done at a place like Yale and all of our colleagues across the country that do this kind of work and try to take whatever aspect of research that is and bring it out to clinical use and to translate it from possibly, even experiments in fish and see how that could be used to benefit the health of all of our communities out there. So in my position there, it's my job to, it's obviously, it's a large job, and it certainly is not just me that is doing this by any means, and everybody on the call on the panel here knows this. It really is to provide a setting in the university in which this can happen, provide the space, try to figure out what we need, what kind of infrastructure we need, work together with all the partners that we need. Obviously, the community is one of those major partners, and we will have a chance to talk about that some more later, but get together with the Yale New Haven Health System, with other hospitals, and Fairhaven Clinic, and a variety of other facilities within the state of Connecticut, and try to get this research out to the community. A lot of what I do is matchmaking to some extent. There may be, say, wonderful scientists at Yale who, again, are studying very basic processes, very fundamental kinds of things of how biology works. And occasionally they are doing something which can translate, and they may or may not even know it until they're talking to somebody, a doctor or a nurse, somebody who is a scientist as well, and also a physician, who may say, this reminds me of something that we see in our patients, and maybe we can figure out a way to move that, translate that from what you're doing into that's kind of one of the most enjoyable parts, if you will, of my job as well. It's really been, COVID is probably a really great example of that. COVID is hopefully, I'm hoping that we're doing better now over the last week or two compared to where we've been over the last 2 years, but it remains to be seen. We'll have to see where that ends up. But COVID has really shown where this can work effectively. We have folks at the university, in the medical school, who are studying very basic things about viruses and of the kinds of viruses that COVID is. And they got together with folks who are actually treating the patients, who are seeing the folks who are coming in with difficulty breathing and all kinds of problems that we see with COVID, and start to look at what are ways we can make this better? What are ways that we can really take this to the next step? So it's a big job. I wish we could do it faster. I wish we could be more effective, perhaps, than we always are. But it's it really is trying to do all of that, and it's critically important, as you mentioned, to do this with the community, and we need the participation, obviously, of the community in a real partnership to make it work, because it's the only way we're going to find out what works and what doesn't work.
Dr. Smith, let me just follow up a little bit and drill down a little further. And Tisha and Reverend Clayton and Reverend Perry, just bear with me. I just want to, Dr. Smith has just mentioned something that kind of has stimulated my thought, given the other hats that he wears, because you're also, Dr. Smith, the co-director of the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation. Have I said that enough? But you're the co-director of the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation and co-primary investigator of the Yale's Clinical and Translational Service Award, the Clinical and Translational Service Award. What does that mean? What's this CTSA? And I did a little reading about it, and that this is a really significant achievement. And then also, if you could talk about your co-primary investigator roles, but the Yale Clinical and Translational Service Award, what's that all about?
Sure. So probably now it's a little over 15 years ago, and the National Institutes of Health recognized that as they looked around at all the things that the federal government was supporting in terms of research, there tended to be an emphasis, again, on the more basic aspects of things, and a little bit less of a coordinated emphasis, at least, at the clinical and translational part, where we actually take this into people and hopefully make people better. And also recognized, which has really been very important, that to some extent we all operate in our own little silos. We do what we hope is great work at Yale. There's also great work going on at MD Anderson. There's great work going on in North Dakota. There's great work going on in Puerto Rico. There's great work going on across the entire United States. And trying to get all of those groups together and provide a structure to get all of those groups together and fund that became a high priority for the NIH. So they started this CTSA program. We were very fortunate to be actually in the first group of 12 institutions that got an award from the NIH, and that has now expanded over the last 15 years, almost 60 institutions across the United States. So my job in that is really to do the same kinds of things we were just talking about, but also to do it broadly across, work with people across the entire country and other universities and make this work very well. And it also provides us with some additional federal funding and all to make sure that we can do this not just within the medical school, but across the nursing school, across all the other powerful scientific research areas that Yale supports.
AJ, if I might just to kind of continue to elaborate on this theme, because when Dr. Smith has really shared very cogently the intersectionality and the connection that this is not working in a silo, but to bring all of our best and brightest minds together wherever they might be, particularly when it comes to medical innovation and creativity. But you were appointed to the CTSA steering committee as if you had nothing else to do recently, and how does this add value to your mission and purpose and the future of research?
Thank you, Tom. I'm excited to be here again and with Brian and Reverend Perry and Reverend Clayton as usual. But it's a great honor to be a part of the steering committee. But as Brian spoke, there's over 60 of these institutions across the country now. And a lot of that activity just takes some coordination. How are we all going to work together? How do we make sure that something that's really innovative happening at one center happening here at Yale, like our cultural ambassadors as an example, how can we spread that and have everyone kind of benefit from the exciting lessons of one place for this global national benefit? And so part of the job of the steering committee is to try to come up with structures that allow that really exciting work to happen and really exciting lessons to be shared, to create this community of scientists and administrators and communities and scholars that are all working together towards this larger purpose of bringing those benefits from that very basic element out to not just clinical benefit, but community benefit. And so that's really what the role is, partnered with others who are on the steering committee to think about how to bring all of these components together. And so I just started this month. My appointment is in January, and I'll serve for the next several years on the committee representing Yale. And also my specific role is representing people like me at all 60 institutions and making sure that there's that operational voice at the table. It's not just a matter of kind of the medical knowledge, but if we can't figure out how to fund these things, if we can't figure out how to make all of the work happen in an effective way, how to make the training happen in an effective way and manage it, then we've failed there as well. And so that's the role that I play on the committee, is representing all of my colleagues around the country who do what I do.
Excellent. And Reverend Clayton and Reverend Perry, I guess want to ask one or two more questions of Dr. Smith before I bring you in, because you wear the hat, Dr. Smith, the chair of the Department of Laboratory Medicine as well. And again, my pause is just when I read what you're accountable for and publicly accountable for. Is your wife proud of you? I mean, I imagine she has to be, but you're chair of the Department of Laboratory Medicine. We all have heard about these false positives, these regular. So chair of laboratory medicine, I mean, that's a complex kind of issue here. And I would surmise that even it's more challenging during COVID. Give us an overview, if you will, about the the operations of the Yale School of Medicine and the YCCI, how it's really had to strategically shift, tactfully shift, and speedily shift to meet the demands of this pandemic.
Sure, no, I'd be happy to. And to be clear, I'm mostly proud of my wife because she was a general internist for many years. She actually was retired recently. And I don't know how she managed to continue to do house calls for as long as she did, because it was not easy. But I think she was probably the last physician, and certainly in the state of Connecticut, who was doing that way back when. So it takes all of us, obviously, to get these things accomplished. So in that role, my job is really to supervise and to make sure that the clinical laboratory testing that patients need and that we need for clinical trials, which sometimes can involve tests that you wouldn't need for routine care, but help us to know why a given treatment is working or not working. My role is to make sure that that works across the health system as well as across the practices of Yale Medicine. We have about 500 employees or so. We're very proud of the group that ranges from those individuals who, when you go to a blood drawing station, because your provider orders a test on you, goes through a blood drawing station, somebody has to draw the blood, somebody has to collect the urine sample or explain to you how to collect the urine sample, all the way through to the folks medical technologists who perform the tests, all of the people that take the literally 20,000 specimens to 30,000 specimens we get in a day into the laboratory and sort them out and get them to the right place. And then at the end of doing the test, send it out and make sure it gets out to the patient as well as to the providers with respect to that. So we do that across the entire health system. We coordinate all of that. COVID has been a challenge for sure. And we actually, we tend to be able to work somewhat independently between the different institutions, whether it's Bridgeport Hospital or Yale New Haven Hospital. But in the COVID era, we didn't have tests easily available when COVID first came along. We all know the pressures that has been. So one of the things we needed to do was to be able to distribute that. So we made sure we could test people in Bridgeport as well as we could test people in New Haven, as well as we could test people in New London. And actually, when COVID first started, and you may recall this, one of the issues was just getting tests, and it was a major challenge. We were fortunate; we have a very excellent virology laboratory led by Dr. Marie Landry, who has developed tests before for a variety of other types of viruses that are out there. Things like West Nile, you may remember, was a big issue 10 years ago, and it's still an ongoing issue. And her group and her operation was actually was able to bring up a test, not that you could buy from anywhere, but just so we could figure out how to do within the clinical laboratories at Yale New Haven to test for COVID. And then that bridged us, if you will, as we moved along to when some of the larger manufacturers and whatnot could also provide some testing. So it's a complex thing. I take this opportunity to mention, when you see your provider, when you're in the hospital or an outpatient, you see the doctor and the nurse maybe who takes care of you. You see the person who gets you into the clinic, into the office, or what have you. There's this whole host of other people, and that's what a lot of the folks that work in our clinical laboratory shop are in this category, who you just never get to see. And they are incredibly dedicated to all of this. I mean, I can tell you in COVID, they were all working double shifts every day for 5-6 days in a row and crazy things like that to make this all happen. So it takes a village, I guess, to be able to do this. And so I'm in charge of one of those villages.
As well as in Puerto Rico, I believe.
We do some testing for some of the institutions in Puerto Rico as well, and to a variety of other institutions, mostly mostly in New England and kind of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area as well.
And Reverend Perry and Reverend Clayton, just before I come to you, I just wanted to ask Dr. Smith another question about COVID testing. And I know Reverend Clayton, you had, a snow out. You were helping to increase COVID testing on Saturday, but you had a little problem with the snow coming from the clouds, I guess, and probably reschedule that. But Dr. Smith, do we still need to increase access for COVID testing on January 31st?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it is far, far, far better than it was 2 years ago, obviously. And I think that we've gotten to a point where most people have reasonable access to testing, but it's never perfect. I think there are certainly populations that we haven't quite gotten the kind of testing that is needed as rapidly as perhaps it's needed. And we are still going through periods of time where you need to do so much testing. And during the recent Omicron and variant suddenly hitting Connecticut as well as other places across the world, there was a sudden need to increase testing all over again. And that stresses the system, and particularly when Omicron has been a big stress for us in the system, because not only do we need to do more testing, but many of our personnel who are engaged in doing the testing and all the things we were talking about before have been exposed to Omicron, and they have to stay home and can't come into work and do that. And so it's been a kind of a double hit during this. So I think we're doing far better than we were 2 years ago. I think it's been great to see distribution of home testing and all of those kinds of things to try to deal with this. It's still not perfect.
As tomorrow will be the start of Black History Month, so as they say, someone very famous said, the struggle continues, but hopefully it can be a joyous and passionate struggle. Reverend Perry and Reverend Clayton, we talked a little bit last week about how the cultural ambassadors have partnered with the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation to expand access to the vaccines, and the work that you as community leaders have been doing. And I have no reluctance to repeat how important that work has been. But how are you guys continuing the mission to get information out about this virus and the means that we can employ, deploy, create, adopt to combat it? Reverend Perry, would you like to start?
I'm going to let Reverend Clayton start, and then I'm going to be the back door.
That's good. That's good.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Our original mission basically was to just inform our community and educate them of the importance of clinical research, because there were so few minority participants in clinical research. But then along came COVID and things shifted. And a lot of the effort and the energy was placed on COVID. And there was a hesitancy and our neighborhoods more than other places, and the information was changing because people just didn't know. But now, all over the state, the ambassadors are hosting pop-up clinics. We have been giving out COVID testing kits. We've been giving out masks. We've been on shows like yours, sharing the news of how to keep yourself safe and telling people that the vaccine is extremely safe and they're effective and they save lives. We've been preaching this and teaching this and having flyers and now we have these new videos with the children in them, which are extremely cute. Sure. I used to be like that, but now, about 6 feet, don't quite look like that now. But when you see the little children excited about getting a vaccine, and the parents are encouraging them to do so, it's a wonderful thing. But with all of this good work going on, there are still many people who have a hesitancy to get their children vaccinated. As a matter of fact, some of the adults are not vaccinated. And as you know, on February the 22nd, 445 Broad Street in Bridgeport, we will have another vaccine. And let me just take a moment to say this. I have a 3-year-old niece and a 5-year-old niece. Both, one caught COVID in daycare, one caught it in their kindergarten class. And both of these little children brought this home to their parents. So if that doesn't tell us how important it is to get the little children vaccinated when they can, I don't know what else will. So let us do all we can to share this great news that these vaccines are not only safe, but they are effective, and they are continuously saving lives.
Well said, well said. Reverend Perry?
Yes, I would just like to simply say that we, the Amy Zion Cultural Ambassadors, wanted Dr. Brian Smith to be on this program to highlight not only him, but the work that he's doing with YCCI, because it is because of him and especially my friend Tisha Harris, who has just distinguished herself as well. And so by highlighting them in the community today, we're letting our community know that this partnership is serious, and that the people that are engaged in it are really competent people and world-renowned. And so what they've done to help us in terms of engaging communities and research to help with the relevance and speed up translational discoveries that may help improve outcomes, particularly for minority populations. And that is awesome. So when we talk about YCCI, you have to look at this partnership. And if it wasn't for this partnership, we would not have these pop-up clinics in Bridgeport and Waterbury and other places. Had it not been for this partnership, we would not have interns who were phenomenal last year. That Yale brought on, basically targeting minorities to be a part of this internship, and the exposure program, and then so many other programs that we're bringing to the community that have been absent or avoided because of of racism, let me just say it, or because of just neglect. But because we have these kind of fine people, and my friend who's not here, Oniyema, who did the vaccine clinic for New Haven, and we were able to recruit a substantial amount of minority populations, including myself and Reverend Clayton. I mean, that's how we're gonna make this positive. This is how we're gonna make it work, is that working together with individuals who have competency, integrity, and who care about the community, and we want the community to see their faces. They see our faces, but we want to let them know it's not us, it's all of us together. And that's why I think this is a wonderful opportunity, Tom, for the Ficklin show to help us broadcast the value of this YCCI partnership.
Definitely my pleasure. And Tisha and Dr. Perry has indicated kind of building the infrastructure, but part of that is that the training new generation of scientists and investigators, and kind of this pipeline and getting young people, the best and the brightest, triggering their mind, turning on their mind and their body and their spirit, that they're joining this crusade. So tell us a little bit about how YCCI has been involved with really the mission of training a new generation of scientists and investigators, catching them early.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about it. I think it's still the highlight of everyone's day when they spend time with any of our interns. But the program, even in its beginnings, was really focused on how can we train the next generation. But I'd say, 15 years ago when we started, or more than 15 years ago, almost 17 years ago when the program started, it was really at the faculty level. So how do we think about faculty who are doing basic research, but they need to think about clinical problems and translational problems and community-based interventions and policy. And so a lot of the efforts from more than a decade ago were at that level. But what we've been able to do over the years is transition. And so, I'd say almost 7 or 8 years ago, we started focusing on, college students and how we would think about getting college students interested in research. And then with the influence and the tenacity of the two gentlemen that are on this call, Reverend Perry and Reverend Clayton, they really were worried last year about this next generation at an earlier age. How do we make sure that even children are starting to understand, career options? It's really important when you think about some of the rates, not just thinking about in the context of physicians or nurses, which we face a critical shortage. If we don't do anything right now, we're facing, some of the estimates are 40,000 to 100,000 physician shortages in just the next 15 years. If we don't change our health patterns, that number could be as high as 200,000. Then you think about the issues that we're talking about here, the lack of people of color or marginalized populations wanting to engage in health or being hesitant to engage in health because of all of the issues, historical issues. If we don't change those health patterns, then all of those shortages get worse. But if someone's seeking a minority physician, we have to start thinking about some of those earlier challenges, like the fact that there's a dropout rate at high school of children of color, in some cases twice as high as their white counterparts, or at the college level that, almost 50% of the students who in some studies show as high as 50% of the Black students who start college don't finish college after 6 years. So you think about all of these challenges in this way. And what the ambassadors have encouraged us to do in conversations with Brian and the dean is let's start the interventions at that earlier stage, because if we're going to have a physician in 15 years, we need to start thinking about it in elementary and middle school. So let's start there by saying to families and children and high school students and early college that you could be a clinical researcher, and you could either, as Brian said, it takes a village. If you don't want to be a physician, you could also, think about working in lab medicine. You could think about being a coordinator. You could think about being an administrator. It really is this village concept, but look at all of these incredible career options. And so that's really what the program is. And we're so excited about it. We've got this first group of students who stayed with us since last summer, and they are continuing to get their training and education. We're getting ready to open up another round, and hopefully this time COVID will be kinder to us and not everything will have to be virtual. And that we'll really have this entire engagement strategy that goes from the time that someone shows an interest or a spark at middle school all the way through if they want to be a physician in those physician years. And that's really what we're working hard on now, is how can we sustain that child's engagement and that family's engagement and success, because it will take a village to change all of those really discouraging numbers about dropout at high school and college, because there are real issues behind it, financial issues and other things. We have to think about different strategies for overcoming those.
Absolutely. And Dr. Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe last summer you had a chance to kind of share and interact with some of the let me say the young scholars. Why was that important to you, and what was it like to chat with these young and emerging minds?
I mean, I think Tisha and has really nailed it very well. I mean, it's creating the next generation, right? And this is so critical. I mean, from a truly selfish point of view, I need somebody to help me out when I retire 10 years from now or 15 years from now. And we need to be bringing them along now. I think as Tisha well said, I think we've sort of gone after this from the end point backwards. And I think what really, and to the credit of Reverend Clayton and Reverend Perry and all the cultural ambassadors, that's great. And so we can kind of work our way back to college, but we need to work our way all the way back much earlier than that, so that we have folks who get excited about it early in life, and then it becomes a lifelong mission and a lifelong passion, and that's absolutely crucial. I'll tell you, there's one other thing that is a little bit off from that, but I actually think is important, and maybe it's a bit selfish also. But one of the nice things about, I always love doing teaching at a variety of levels, including at elementary school levels and stuff, which I don't get a lot of opportunity to do anymore, but I do occasionally. The great thing when you've been in something as long as I have is there's a lot of questions that I probably used to ask 30 years ago, but I've forgotten to ask now. I've accepted how we've accepted some answer to it that may or may not be the real answer, whether it's how you deliver care, whether it's something about some basic biology, whether it's about drugs, any of those kinds of things. And the great thing about the summer program and similar programs is they don't know enough not to ask that question. They ask the question, and we all start to think about it again and say, you may be right. We haven't really thought about this correctly. So I think it really is, it's bringing along the pipeline. But frankly, it's also helping all of us who are at the other end of the pipeline try to do the right thing.
This might be too much of a technical question, but I guess my spirit tells me to go there in terms of informatics, because I know that you spent some time this summer sharing what the power of informatics and that concept and how it relates to patient care and advanced research. And I mention it because we see how the social media has been so contentious. People are getting information from so many different sources, and informatics, it seems to me, helps people to kind of visualize in let's say a true way, an actual way, to discern truth from falsehood. So if we could, not necessarily digress, but just kind of Tisha and Dr. Smith, talk about informatics and why that was important for the young people to be exposed to.
Tisha, you want to start us off?
Sure. It's so funny because, Brian's so right, especially when you think about things like social media and other things, that there's a real generational gap. And so if we don't address the generational gap there, we really have missed an entire audience. And so one of the exciting things about the internship was, as we thought about it with Alan Shao, another colleague of ours, he's the chief medical information officer, informatics information officer for the health system in the school, was how do we kind of devise things that students could do virtually? And so a lot of our projects were virtual digital health projects. And so they thought about this intersection of social media and health and research and care and messaging to younger individuals. They actually did projects focused on the patient portal and how we think about the patient portal as a tool, which was really exciting because we've all had to think about patient portals on health in COVID because we've all had to do virtual doctor's appointments. And so how do you think about it from that perspective? And they bring this young mind and fresh content to it. So it's a really important part about how we think about it. But one of the other really important things to think about is we think about how we're truly going to transform. We have to transform not just here in Connecticut, but we have to transform across this large ecosystem. We need things that are transferable and tools that are transferable. And so if we develop something that's really unique and special here, it's hard to spread it if it's not done in a way that could be systematic. And so a lot of the things that we think about related to informatics and the health record, like our health record here is made by a company, Epic. 75% of the US population has the same health record. So if we can figure out a way to do things better in that record with, Reverend Pear and Reverend Clayton and the cultural ambassadors to reach populations that haven't engaged in healthcare in the same way, we could potentially spread it to 75% of the US population by just partnering with that corporation to think about it in this informatics-based approach. So it's been pretty exciting, and there's lots of really exciting things, and the students just brought it all they thought about ways of using TikTok. I think they wanted Reverend Perry and Reverend Clayton to do a TikTok dance, which I'm still waiting for. Definitely. But it's been really exciting.
We'll catch it. We'll try to get some videos of them on Sunday, because they kind of move. Sometimes the Spirit will move them, and whether the robes will restrict their movements or not, Reverend Clayton still manages to dance a little bit. Let's just, if we could, Dr. Smith, I'm just curious, as you heard Tisha talk, if you have just a further elaboration on what she's just shared, because this issue is really important to me.
And again, as always, I'm always glad. I was actually very pleased that you let me start all of this, because both Reverend Perry and Reverend Clayton are a hard act to follow, and Tisha's always an impossible act to follow. I think she really did capture it. Frankly, I don't have a Facebook, and I barely know what TikTok is because my kids have shown me TikTok. But if we're going to really get and reach all generations, and we're going to reach all different communities out there, all of whom come from different ways of looking at media, of how you get your information, how you do all those things. There's no question we need to do that on the social media front. And as Tisha said, the great thing about it is it really does, it's an easy way to get out beyond New Haven, beyond Bridgeport, beyond Connecticut, and reach out far and wide with respect to this. And so for me, it was just it was a pure educational exercise. It was for me, it was like flipping things. I'm just learning stuff from our interns, and which is great, and it really was just terrific to see.
I mean, we have about 20 minutes, and as people, as thoughts might enter your mind, we can certainly jump in and freelance a little bit, so feel free to do that. But Dr. Smith, I was curious also, in terms of your summer experience with the students, you spoke to them about stem cell research and on oncology and potentially even cures. I want people to understand that this show is to kind of emphasize, stimulate, inspire folks that we're working on cures. We're working on saving lives and minimizing pain and minimizing family angst and grief and sorrow. So stem cell research has been in the news for maybe 20 or 30 years, but particularly you were able to share some of that information with the students as it pertains to oncology. And so I just wondered whether you want to kind of chat about that for a second.
Sure. I'm not sure what I can chat about in a second. This may be maybe more extensive time than that. But maybe I can just pick one example, maybe one or two examples very quickly, and try to explain a little bit about it. And this was, to be honest, this is kind of how I got involved way back when in clinical and translational research, and trying to do what we discuss as taking things from the bench, the laboratory bench and whatnot, bringing it to the bedside, learning from the bedside, taking it back to the bench again. So see if I can do this in just a minute or two. So one of the ways that we have always treated leukemia is with chemotherapy and radiation therapy. And let me just take that as an example, treating leukemia, and then we'll back it out a little bit. And when I first got into this game, I'll be honest, the results in terms of individuals who have leukemia and how well they did was not great. And it was very challenging, not just for survival, but frankly, for good quality of life survival as well with leukemia. And one of the approaches, what we thought we knew, and you'll see why I say we thought we knew in a minute. What we thought we knew was that maybe we could cure certain leukemias if we could get away with higher doses, basically, of chemotherapy or radiation therapy, that we just weren't giving enough. And the reason we weren't giving enough was because one of the major side effects of a lot of those drugs is to suppress your blood cells. Your blood cells carry oxygen around. They fight off infection. We'll come back to that in a minute. They fight off infection. They make your blood clot. And when you give chemo and radiation therapy to treat a disease like leukemia, you tend to have as one of your major side effects killing off those cells. Turns out what you're actually killing off is something we call a stem cell. We're very farmer-like in some of the ways we think. So it's a cell that, like the stem of a plant, can give rise to an entire tree, an entire plant, basically. And that's what a stem cell can do for the blood stem cells. And that's what we're talking about here. It turns out that the blood stem cells live inside your bones. They live in what's called the bone marrow. And this is the basis of what's called bone marrow transplantation, something that now has been going on, it goes back to when I first started, so about 35 years ago, I guess. Not quite as old as I'm making myself. And so one of the things that we came up with at that time was to say, okay, if we just need to give higher doses, here's what we need to do. We can give the higher doses, but then we need to replace your stem cells so you can grow back all of your blood cells. How do we do that? Well, you've got brothers and sisters out there who may be able to donate their bone marrow. It turns out that you can take away a lot of the bone marrow, you just make more of it again. So it's pretty harmless. It's not like grabbing a whole kidney from somebody or a liver or something like that. And we could take out the bone marrow. So we would treat you with this. It would basically kill those stem cells, but we would give you back new ones that come from a brother or a sister. Okay? And it turns out that we can take it out of the bone marrow, and it's really easy actually to give it back because they're really smart. And if you just give it like an intravenous infusion, like you give other kinds of drugs, they find their way into the bone marrow, they grow, and they make all of the cells again. So we thought this was really smart. And so we took one of the particular, I'm not going to details the different types of leukemia, but took one of those and started to do that. And indeed, what we found was we were able to get to a state where the leukemia wouldn't come back again 95% or more of the time. So occasionally it would come back, but this was really being very effective. But the problem of the whole treatment was that people were suffering from complications of the treatment. And the thing that was the complications, which is still a big problem in the whole area of bone marrow transplant, is that within all of those blood cells is what's called your immune system. Your immune system is a whole part of your body which is designed to fight off infection, fight off foreign invaders that come into your body. Its whole purpose in life is to look around all the time and say, wait a minute, this COVID thing doesn't belong here. I've got to get rid of this COVID thing. Or I have to get rid of this bacterial germ that came in with a pneumonia, or whatever it may be. So those immune cells are responsible for doing that. When you do what I just talked about, you treat somebody for the leukemia, you think you get rid of the leukemia better than 95% of the time by giving this great treatment, and then we replace all of that with new bone marrow from your brother or sister. The problem is that occasionally the new bone marrow coming in, the new stem cells coming in, the new immune system coming in, looks around at the entire new person that they're in and says, this doesn't belong here. This is not where I come from. I have to attack the entire person. And that is a disease, if you will, that we call, again, we get very farmer-like. I've never been a farmer, but I can speak the language, I guess, in part. We call the stem cells that you get, that we put into you, the graft, because we're grafting it on just like you graft on a branch of a tree or something like that. And the person who gets it, the person with leukemia in this case, the host. And so we have a thing that we call graft versus host disease. And it can kill people. And it certainly can make you very, very, very miserable. So one more to the story. So we said, here's the thing. We know what's causing this is the immune cells that we're putting in. And it's actually not the actual stem cells that make all these cells, but we put in a whole bunch of these other immune cells with it. Okay? And those cells go in and they start to hurt the individual they're going into. So let's be really smart about this. We will take away all of those cells. We'll take away all of those immune cells and give you this back. And hopefully then we'll get rid of the leukemia just like we did before, but we will not have this graft versus leukemia. Okay? Well, we did that. And we were ecstatic because graft versus leukemia went way, way down and wasn't getting people into too much trouble. But we realized after 6, 12, 18 months, all of a sudden, it used to be that the leukemia that came back only came back 1 or 2, 3% of the time. Now it was coming back 50 or 60% of the time. And what that taught us, and now we've gone on to try to come up with new ways to treat cancer based on this, was that really it wasn't just the chemo and radiation therapy that was getting rid of leukemia. It actually was that immune system that we were giving people. So if we can come up with a way to give a targeted immune system to somebody that will just attack leukemia, this could be a great new way of treating people. And that's something that's going on today. So I'm sorry I got off on this. This is one of the things I think about a lot in my life. But I think it's a good example of the interplay of all the things we were talking about, and that kind of takes a village, right? It's the scientists who could figure this out in various things. It's the patients who taught us about this. It's the families who told us what was happening to people at home, and really helped to get us through. I will stop now. I apologize, but it gets me off on these things.
No, Dr. Smith, from my standpoint, this is a perfect way for us to conclude, for people to kind of see and witness and hear the medical scientific discovery process. It's ongoing. It's not, you don't have a foregone conclusion. That's why you're exploring an investigation, but also safe. So I really appreciate your getting down on the specifics for a person to see, someone in your capacity, how serious, but also tactical and strategic and thoughtful, and just putting all of our intellectual skills applying to a problem. Tisha, we have about 3 minutes. Reverend Clayton and Reverend Perry, I apologize. I may not get you a chance to answer this question, but the future vision for YCCI, Tisha, it seems to me that you might not have nightmares about what the future vision for YCCI are. You may have daymares and day visions, but I want to give you a chance to kind of share what, from your standpoint, where do you see the future vision for YCCI? Because as I alluded at the top of the show, this is a continual evolution issue that we cannot sleep on. We cannot bury our heads in the sand. I just wonder whether you felt comfortable in sharing a little bit about, maybe you have 2 minutes, about the future vision for the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation from your perspective.
Sure. I think one of the things that I just want to say is a big thank you. I say it every time you invite me to the show, but thank you to the cultural ambassadors and to Reverend Perry and Reverend Clayton as one of the founding members, and really driving us every day to be better, because I think that that's really the future vision for YCCI is how do we continue to work together as a group to change lives of the patients that we see every day in our community, and how do we begin to think about all of these through the lens of ensuring that we have an equitable health system and that we have equitable opportunities in the entire space of translational medicine, including employment and training. And so that's really the vision for the future is how do we get there? And how do we get there in a way that acknowledges all of the incredible work? Because we have, over the past decade with these two gentlemen, really changed so much, transformed so much, achieved so much because of them driving every day to be better, with multiple text messages and phone calls sometimes in one day, but driving every day to be better. And so with that in mind, how do we think about what are the things that we're doing? But one of the really exciting things that I think that we do together is we also measure what we do. So if we are doing something and it's not working, then let's change it. You know, Reverend Clayton said that we're doing the pop-up clinics for the vaccines at the churches. We started 2 years ago with spreading the message about participation in COVID research right on your show. So, you know, I think it's that evolution, but partnered with the community, and how do we continue this mission together with all thinking about how we carry everyone, how to meet people where they are, so that we're really changing not just the face of medicine and research, but changing our health, taking charge of our health, the theme of this partnership with you. I think that was 2 minutes. I'll try not to go
No, you did well. Reverend Harry hasn't played the music yet. Well, I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. So that was perfect. Thank you, everyone. Let's do it again.
As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going. Better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, hey. Cause this is my road. Let's camera action, I'm ready to go. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, hey.